what is being built is the architecture of oppression.
So when we look at South Korea, when we look at China, when we look at, Taiwan, Singapore, countries like this, now America, there's all of this data being collected. How are the governments? So when in South Korea, I get a text saying, "Oh, you met Joe Blow. He might be infected. You should, sequester yourself for 14 days." How are they getting that data?
That's a good question. I mean, that's really the one that should make everyone just look at their phone and, sort of raise an eyebrow. There are a number of ways that you can track the location of someone through their phone. There are these cell phone towers themselves, but there's also the wireless network that you're connected to. And then what other wireless networks are around you that you're not connected to? This you can think of as what wireless networks your phone can hear. And so these wireless network identifiers are then collected and they're mapped out against GPS. And then they know if you can see mom's Wi-Fi and neighbor Ted's Wi-Fi and the library Wi-Fi all at the same time, you have to be within range of these things. It becomes a proxy for location. Now that we know all of our phones can and are being tracked at all times just by being turned on, the phone companies have it at a bare minimum. Facebook probably has it, Google probably has it, Apple probably has it, and many, many other companies you've never even heard of that run ad networks. What this really means in a France or a United States is they go, well, look, we're aware of privacy concerns, so what we're going to do is we're going to depersonalize this information. We're going to anonymize it. And we're not going to look at individuals. We're going to look at the flows of movement of these phones, right? We're not looking at one phone. We're looking at the aggregate movements of phones. The problem is, if you're not tracking one infection or 100 infections, but you're tracking 100,000 infections, contact tracing quickly becomes useless. And more, the precision of location information is either so rough that it is largely useless, which is the case if we're talking about the cell phone networks, the cell phone towers you're near, to very, very precise location information, in which case this information, when you're applying it at scale, cannot be anonymized in a meaningful way. And then there's this big question of, well, where does all that information go? How is it controlled? Who is it being used? It's information about me. I should have some influence over it. I should have control over it. But unfortunately, in the United States, to a large degree, you don't. There is no basic privacy law in the United States. We need to be able to make sure that the brakes that are being pumped are on the pandemic rather than our society.
It seems that this is maybe the greatest question of the modern era around civil liberties, around the right to privacy. Yet no one's asking this question. We really don't hear a lot about it. And so now this is probably the largest societal zeitgeist change to, yes, have the information because we have to stop this thing. We're declaring, various states of emergencies here and there, but these have sweeping powers. So we're sitting here in America, quarantined, and saying, okay, what does this mean going forward?
When I think about the future, when any of us look at where this is heading, we need to think about where we've been. And sadly, these kind of emergency powers that are born out of crises have a perfect history of abuse. I mean, down the board, whenever you look at these things, the funniest part about it, in a dark way, is that the emergency never ends. It becomes normalized when you talk about mass surveillance. The Bush-era warrantless wiretapping program, only part of it was shut down. And it's rolled over and it's rolled over and it's rolled over. And we've reformed things at the edges, but the basic practices of what was supposed to be a stopgap emergency, which was in response to another stopgap emergency, which was, of course, the legacy of 9/11 and the Patriot Act. And we are still today engaged in the same wars that we declared nearly 20 years ago that we have not managed to escape. We had, as a result of 9/11, the rise of nuclear Iran because their counterbalance in Iraq was removed. We saw authoritarianism begin to creep across Western societies, places we wouldn't expect, like Hungary and Poland. As authoritarianism spreads, as emergency laws proliferate, as we sacrifice our rights, we also sacrifice our capability to arrest this slide into a less liberal and less free world. Do you truly believe that when the first wave, the second wave, the 16th wave of the coronavirus is a long forgotten memory, that these capabilities will not be kept, that these data sets will not be kept? Will those capabilities begin to be applied to small-time criminality? Will they begin to be applied to political analysis? Will they begin to be applied for doing things like performing a census? Will they be used for political polling? No matter how it is being used, what is being built is the architecture of oppression. And you might trust who is dealing with it today. You might trust who runs it. You might go, I don't care about Mark Zuckerberg, but someone else will have this data eventually. Some other country will have this data eventually. In your country, a different president will have control of this data eventually, and someone will abuse it. Now, could China use it for something interesting to them? Yes. And what happens when they abuse it? And I believe they already have. They're running internment camps in China. And these practices, when they don't get pushback, when they don't get condemnation, when they don't face sanction for this, will become normalized and they will spread. And we'll face them in Russia. We'll face them in Iran. And then we'll face them in Poland. We'll face them in Hungary. We'll face them throughout Europe. We will face them in the United States because we will face them everywhere